Admiral Zephyr's face curved into a cruel sneer as the holographic display showed Earth's puny military satellites winking out one by one. The Andromedan commander watched with cold satisfaction as his ship's energy beams sliced through humanity's feeble orbital defenses like a blade through ripe fruit. On the flagship's bridge, his assembled officers chittered and clicked their insectoid mandibles in mocking laughter at the display of Earth's primitive weapons disintegrating under the onslaught. The notion that the backward humans could pose any threat to the glorious Andromedan Empire was utterly ridiculous. But the laughter died abruptly when a new icon flared to life on the display. A massive energy signature that dwarfed those of the Andromedan ships. Confused clicks rose from the officers as their sensors tracked an enormous beam of concentrated solar radiation lancing out from the far side of the moon, where the humans had constructed a secret weapon. In moments of dawning horror, Zephyr realized that the Earthlings had done the unthinkable. They had weaponized their own sun. The Admiral's four compound eyes widened as the devastating beam slammed into the Andromedan fleet, the sheer power behind it overwhelming even their vaunted shields. Zephyr's ship bucked violently as alarms shrieked, the stench of melting insectoid flesh filling the air. On the view screen, Andromedan dreadnoughts burst like rotten fruit as the solar beam swept through their ranks, reducing the once invincible armada to drifting wreckage. In that moment, Zephyr understood the fatal depth of Andromedan arrogance. They had dismissed humanity as weak primitives, but in doing so, they had failed to recognize the greatest strengths of the Earthlings, the adaptability, ingenuity, and sheer indomitable will that had allowed them to turn the tables on a foe who had every other advantage. The Admiral shrieked a command to retreat, but it was far too late. The solar beam scythed his flagship in half, consigning Zephyr and the last Andromeda in hopes for conquest to oblivion in the searing fires of the human spirit weaponized. As the smoldering remnants of the Andromedan fleet tumbled through space, the mood on Earth was far from celebratory. General Marcus Graves surveyed the report streaming in from across the globe and shook his head grimly. The aliens may have been dealt a crushing blow, but their invasion was not nearly finished. Graves turned to the ragtag group of officers huddled around the situation table, their faces lit by the sickly glow of the holographic display. "We hurt them, but we haven't stopped them," he growled. "And now they know we have teeth. They'll hit back harder than ever." He jabbed a finger at the revolving globe, stabbing at red pinpricks that denoted Andromedan troop concentrations. "We can't beat them head-on, so we disperse, small units, lightning raids on their weak points. We buy time for Cooper to finish his weapon." On the far side of the moon, Dr. Raymond Cooper wiped sweat from his furrowed brow as he studied the towering framework of the solar array. It was an audacious plan, bordering on mad, to turn the sun itself into a weapon. But audacity was all humanity had left. "The capacitor banks are still fluctuating wildly," Dr. Elena Ivanova snapped as she stormed into the control room, her lab coat flaring behind her. The brilliant but acerbic physicist had clashed with Cooper from the moment she arrived, but he couldn't deny her expertise. Cooper sighed heavily. "We'll have to recalibrate the whole damn system again. We're running out of time." And time was a commodity that grew scarcer by the day. Commander Azalea, Admiral Zephyr's most ruthless subordinate, had taken over the Andromedan war effort. She had a new plan: to systematically exterminate the human resistance, leaving no one alive to threaten Andromedan rule. Azalea's insectoid features twisted into a cold approximation of a smile as she watched a live feed of her troops incinerating a human gorilla cell. The Earthlings scurried like vermin before the cleansing plasma fire, but there would be no escape. She would scour this planet clean of their taint. General Graves' face was etched with haggard lines as he stared at the footage captured by a Russian spy drone. An Andromedan task force, larger than any yet seen, was embarking from their staging point in Siberia, heading straight for the moon base. Graves slammed a fist on the console. Conventional weapons were useless. The alien ships would swat them from the sky long before they got close. There was only one option left, and it tasted like bile in his throat. He opened a comm channel, The signal carefully scrambled and bounced through a dozen relays. "This is Graves. I need your arsenals, all of it. Every damn chem round and bioagent you've got. You'll get your amnesty." On the screen, a rogue Chinese general smiled thinly. "I thought you'd never ask." Cooper stared in horrified wonder at the blossoming explosions blooming across the moon base's perimeter. Azalea's ships were here, raining hell down on them. The solar array shuddered as a plasma blast detonated nearby, showering the control room with sparks and shattered glass. Ivanova's face was ghostly pale. "The capacitor banks are destabilizing. If we lose containment..." "We're dead anyway if we don't get this thing working," Cooper snarled. "Divert all power from the base's reactors. We need to fire now." Even as Cooper watched the charging sequence tick towards completion, a new sun flared to baleful life on the monitor. A ship larger than any he had yet seen, dropping from warp speed on the edge of sensor range. Azalea's flagship, poised to deliver the killing blow. The solar array thrummed with barely restrained power, tendrils of energy crawling across its vast framework. It was a devil's bargain, harnessing the power of the sun. One Cooper prayed humanity was ready to make. He turned to Ivanova, shouting to be heard over the barrage hammering the base. "Get to the evac shuttles. I'll trigger the firing sequence." The Russian physicist hesitated for only a moment before giving a sharp nod and sprinting from the control room. Cooper watched her go, then turned back to the console, his finger hovering over the activation key. On the monitor, Azalea's flagship loomed like a monstrous insect, its spearhead poised to impale the moon base. Cooper felt a sudden calm wash over him as he stared into the abyss. "Come on then, you bastards," he whispered. "Let's see how you like a taste of the sun." He stabbed down on the firing key as Azalea's flagship filled the screen, its weapons glowing hellish red as they powered towards a final, cataclysmic fusillade. The blinding beam of concentrated sunlight lanced through space, missing Azalea's fleet by mere kilometers. Cooper's heart sank as he watched the errant shot disappear into the void, his modified weapon's first salvo wasted. "Damn it!" He banged his head on the console. "The targeting system's completely off kilter." Ivanova's voice crackled over the comms, punctuated by the sounds of plasma fire. "Cooper, we're out of time! They've breached the outer defenses!" He glanced at the security feeds, watching Andromedan troops swarm through the base's corridors. Their chitinous forms moved with predatory grace, plasma weapons reducing human defenders to ash. Cooper's mind raced. There was only one option left, but it meant certain death. He keyed the intercom. "Elena, I need you to hold them off the control room as long as you can. I'm going outside." "Outside, Raymond? That's insane." He cut the connection, already moving towards the airlock. As he donned his spacesuit with practiced efficiency, Cooper's thoughts drifted to the battle raging above. In the vacuum of space, Admiral Novak's ships danced a deadly ballet with Azalea's fleet. Novak's voice rang out over the encrypted channel, cool and controlled despite the chaos. "All ships, concentrate fire on their lead cruiser's port nacelles. We need to keep them off that array." His ragtag armada responded with a coordinated barrage, their weapons finding chinks in the Andromedan armor. But for every alien ship they damaged, two more seemed to take its place. On the lunar surface, Cooper cycled through the airlock. He stepped out onto the regolith, the vast solar array looming before him. Its framework hummed with barely suppressed power, arcs of energy skittering across its surface. He began his perilous trek, each bounding step bringing him closer to the manual control terminal. The array's focusing dishes tracked his movement, their mirrored surfaces reflecting the pitched battle overhead. Inside the base, Ivanova and the remaining personnel fought a desperate holding action. She ducked behind an overturned console as alien plasma scorched the air above her. "Fall back to the secondary control room," she shouted, providing covering fire as her team retreated. An Andromedan soldier burst through the barricade, mandibles clicking in triumph. Ivanova's sidearm barked twice, and the creature collapsed in a twitching heap. She allowed herself a grim smile before following her team down the corridor. Cooper reached the manual terminal, his breath ragged in the confines of his helmet. He interfaced with the system, fingers flying over the controls as he recalibrated the targeting parameters. A proximity alarm blared. Azalea's flagship was closing in, its weapons powering up for a killing blow. He looked up, watching the monstrous ship loom ever larger. Cooper's hand hovered over the firing switch, every muscle tense as he waited for the perfect moment. "Come on, you bastards," he muttered. "Just a little closer." The Andromedan vessel filled his visor, and Cooper's finger descended toward the switch. In that instant, he felt the weight of humanity's fate pressing down upon him. Cooper's finger slammed down on the firing switch. The solar array hummed to life, its framework vibrating with awe-inspiring power. A blinding beam of concentrated sunlight erupted from the array, lancing through space and missing Azalea's fleet by mere kilometers. "No!" Cooper pounded his fist against the terminal. The errant shot disappeared into the void. Wasted. He'd failed. But failure wasn't an option, not with humanity's fate hanging in the balance. Cooper's breath came in ragged gasps as he bounded across the lunar surface, each step kicking up plumes of regolith. The vast solar array loomed before him, its focusing dishes tracking his movement with eerie precision. Inside the moon base, plasma fire sizzled through the air as Ivanova and her team fell back to the secondary control room. She slammed the reinforced door shut, wincing at the sounds of alien chittering on the other side. "Status report," she barked, rushing to a flickering console. "We've lost the main array controls," a technician reported, his face ashen. "Cooper's out there alone." Ivanova's fist tight. "Then we buy him time." In orbit, Admiral Novak's ships danced a deadly ballet with Azalea's fleet. His voice crackled over the comm, strained but resolute. "All ships, concentrate fire on their lead cruiser. We need to keep them off that array." But for every Andromedan ship they damaged, 2 more seemed to materialize from the inky void. Novak watched helplessly as his fleet was slowly but inexorably pushed back. On the lunar surface, Cooper reached the manual control terminal. His suit's oxygen reserves blinked a warning. He was running out of time. Gritting his teeth, he interfaced with the system and began recalibrating the targeting parameters. A proximity alarm blared. Cooper looked up to see Azalea's flagship closing in, its weapons powering up for a killing blow. He redoubled his efforts, fingers flying over the controls. "Come on, you bastards," he muttered. "Just a little closer." The monstrous ship filled his visor. Cooper's hand hovered over the firing switch, muscles coiled and ready. In that moment, as he stared into the face of annihilation, Raymond Cooper felt the weight of humanity's fate pressing down upon him. He took a deep breath, steadied his aim, and prepared to unleash the sun's fury upon their alien oppressors. Invaders. Cooper's finger descended on the firing switch. The solar array thrummed with hardly restrained power. A blinding beam of concentrated sunlight erupted from its focusing dishes, streaking across the void of space. This time, Cooper's aim was true. The beam struck Azalea's flagship dead center. For a moment, the massive vessel seemed to glow from within, its hull incandescent. Then, with a silent flash that outshone the stars, it disintegrated. Cooper shielded his eyes, his suit's visor auto-darkening to protect him from the glare. When he looked again, the space where Azalea's ship had been was empty save for a rapidly expanding cloud of superheated debris. The effect on the battle was immediate. The Andromedan fleet, suddenly leaderless, fell into disarray. Admiral Novak's voice crackled over the comm, triumphant. "All ships, press the advantage. Don't let them regroup." Earth's defenders surged forward, their weapons finding targets with deadly precision. One by one, the alien vessels winked out of existence, reduced to cosmic dust by humanity's newfound fury. Inside the moon base, Ivanova and her team cheered as they watched the alien forces crumble. She allowed herself a moment of exultation before snapping back to the task at hand. "Status on Cooper?" A technician's face fell. "His suit, it's not reporting any life signs." Ivanova's heart sank. She had known the risks they all had, but the loss of Cooper still stung. She straightened her back, pushing aside her grief. There would be time to mourn later. "Prepare a retrieval team. We bring him home." In the days that followed, humanity emerged victorious but battered. The scattered remnants of the Andromedan invasion force retreated to a remote outpost, their numbers severely depleted by the devastating power of the solar weapon. On Earth, amid the rubble of shattered cities, people began the slow process of rebuilding. Dr. Elena Ivanova found herself thrust into the spotlight, hailed as a hero alongside the martyred Dr. Raymond Cooper. She stood before a sea of reporters, their cameras flashing incessantly. "The solar weapon project was a team effort," she said, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "Dr. Cooper's sacrifice ensured our survival. We owe him everything." But in private, Ivanova grappled with guilt. She saw Cooper's face every time she closed her eyes, heard his final words echoing in her dreams. The awesome, destructive power they had unleashed burdened immensely on her conscience. News of humanity's victory spread quickly through the galaxy. On distant worlds, beings of all shapes and sizes gathered around screens, watching footage of the battle with a mixture of fear and awe. In the grand halls of the Sovereign Council, the governing body of the Kalran Empire, heated debates raged. Council leader Zoran, his scales gleaming in the artificial light, called for order. "We cannot ignore this development," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Humanity has proven itself far more resourceful than we anticipated. We must act swiftly to ensure they do not become a threat to galactic stability." The Council voted to summon representatives from Earth. As the delegates prepared for their journey, Admiral Zephyr seethed in his command center on the Andromedan outpost. "Surrender," he spat, mandibles clicking in fury. "To those primitive apes? Never." His subordinates exchanged uneasy glances. Commander Azalea, her carapace still bearing scorch marks from her narrow escape, stepped forward. "Sir, our forces are decimated. We cannot hope to—" "Silence!" Zephyr roared. He turned to the viewport, staring out at the stars. His compound eyes gleamed with malice. "If we cannot rule this sector, then we will ensure no one does. Prepare what remains of the fleet. We strike at Earth one final time." As Zephyr's depleted armada set course for Earth, Azalea slipped away to her private quarters. With trembling appendages, she opened a secure channel to the Kalran Empire. It was time to ensure her own survival, even if it meant betraying everything she had once fought for. On Earth, the Kalran delegation arrived to find a world transformed. Where once there had been ruins, new structures rose, gleaming with innovative materials developed by Ivanova and her team. The aliens watched in fascination as swarms of construction drones wove carbon nanotubes into impossibly strong frameworks. Zoran's eyes narrowed as he took in the sight. He turned to his advisors, voice low. "It seems we may have underestimated these humans. Perhaps a more subtle approach is called for." As Earth's leaders prepared to meet with the Kalran delegation, alarms blared. Zephyr's fleet had been detected on approach. Humanity's hard-won peace was about to be shattered once more. The Kalran delegation's arrival coincided with the sudden appearance of Zephyr's fleet, throwing Earth's newfound peace into chaos. As alarms blared, Dr. Elena Ivanova found herself whisked away from the command center, her protests falling on deaf ears. "This is for your own protection, Doctor," a Kalran official hissed, his scales glinting under the emergency lights. Months passed, and Earth's reconstruction efforts progressed under the watchful eyes of their new Abu protectors. Ivanova stood before a gleaming holographic display, her fingers tracing the intricate schematics of the solar array. Beside her, Tarek, her Kalran counterpart, nodded approvingly. "Your adaptations are impressive," Tarek admitted, his compound eyes reflecting the shimmering light. "The Empire's defense platforms will be formidable indeed." Ivanova forced a smile, suppressing the bile rising in her throat. She had become a pawn in the Kalran's game, her life's work twisted to serve alien masters. But beneath her compliant exterior, a plan was taking shape. Late that night, Ivanova slipped through the shadows of the research complex. She approached a maintenance hatch, her heart pounding. A gruff voice whispered from the darkness. "You're late, Doc." Colonel Grant Harlow emerged, his face weathered by years of resistance. Ivanova pressed a data chip into his calloused hand. "Everything I've managed to uncover about their true intentions," she murmured. "Be careful, Grant. If they catch you—" Harlow's eyes hardened. They won't. As the colonel melted back into the night, Ivanova returned to her quarters. She lay awake, mind racing with possibilities and dangers. The web of deceit she was weaving grew more complex by the day. Across the galaxy, Admiral Zephyr paced the bridge of his battered flagship. The remnants of his once mighty fleet drifted in the void, a testament to his failure. A subordinate approached, mandibles clicking nervously. "Admiral, we've received a transmission. It's unusual." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a hooded figure. Commander Nexia's voice was silk over steel. "Admiral Zephyr, your reputation precedes you." Zephyr's eyes narrowed. "What do you want, mercenary?" Nexia's laugh sent chills down his exoskeleton. "To offer you a chance at redemption, of course. And all it will cost you is a little cooperation." On the Kalran homeworld, Counselor Zoran's claws tapped an agitated rhythm on his ornate desk. The reports from Earth troubled him deeply. Humanity's resilience, their rapid technological advancements, it all pointed to a looming threat. "Tarek," he growled into the communicator, "what progress have you made in curtailing the humans' efforts?" The scientist's response was hesitant. "Counselor, I've implemented several false setbacks, but Dr. Ivanova is remarkably persistent." Zoran's eyes flashed dangerously. "Then you must be more creative in your methods. We cannot allow these primitives to surpass us." Back on Earth, Ivanova worked feverishly, her fingers flying over the controls of the prototype solar array. Alarms blared as she overrode safety protocols, channeling power from the reconstruction grid. "Elena, what are you doing?" Tarek's voice crackled over the intercom, panic evident in his tone. Ivanova ignored him, eyes locked on the targeting display. The coordinates of a remote Kalran military base blinked on the screen. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "I'm sorry, Tarek," she whispered, "but this ends now." Her finger descended on the firing switch. A blinding beam of concentrated sunlight lanced into the atmosphere, igniting a maelstrom of unimaginable power. On the monitors, the Kalran base disappeared in a swirling vortex of superheated plasma. Ivanova didn't wait for the aftermath. She grabbed a pre-packed bag and sprinted for the exit, knowing that her act of defiance would not go unanswered. As she disappeared into the night, the sky above burned with the fury of an unleashed sun, a harbinger of the struggle to come. Ivanova's heart pounded as she raced through the shadowy streets, the stolen Kalran data chip clutched tightly in her hand. Behind her, the night sky still glowed with the aftermath of her desperate attack. She ducked into an alleyway, chest heaving, and activated a small device on her wrist. A series of rapid beeps confirmed her location to the resistance. Within minutes, a nondescript hover van pulled up beside her. The door slid open, revealing Colonel Harlow's grim face. "Get in," he growled. "We don't have much time." As they sped through the outskirts of the city, Ivanova caught glimpses of Kalran patrols mobilizing. Sirens wailed in the distance. She turned to Harlow, her eyes blazing with willpower. "We need to get to work immediately. The array components—" "Already en route to the base," Harlow interrupted. "But we've got bigger problems. Zoran's striking back, hard and fast." The van descended into a hidden underground tunnel, emerging after several twisting turns into a vast cavern. The resistance base hummed with activity, scientists hunched over workstations, fighters prepping weapons and ships. Ivanova wasted no time. She gathered a team of the brightest minds, spreading out schematics and the stolen Kalran data. "We need to refine the array, make it more powerful, more precise, and we need to do it fast." Days blurred into nights as they worked tirelessly. Ivanova pushed herself to the brink of exhaustion, fueled by a cocktail of stimulants and raw persistence. Meanwhile, Harlow's network of contacts grew, bringing in decommissioned fighters and experimental weaponry through back channels. On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Zephyr stood before Commander Nexia, his mandibles clicking nervously. The mercenary's hooded figure radiated menace. "The plan is simple," Nexia purred. "My forces will create a distraction at the black site. Your ships will provide cover while my elite team infiltrates and secures the counter-solar tech. Once we have it, we move on the Sovereign Council. Zephyr's compound eyes narrowed. And I have your word that this technology will neutralize the human's weapon? Nexia's laugh was cold and sharp. Admiral, my word is worth precisely what you pay for it, but rest assured, our interests align for now. In the gleaming halls of the Kalran capital, Counselor Zoran raged at his subordinates. Find her! Find Ivanova and crush this pathetic resistance. He turned to Tarek, eyes glinting dangerously. You worked closely with her. You will lead the strike force. Bring her to me, alive if possible, dead if necessary. Tarek bowed low, hiding the conflict in his eyes. As you command, Counselor. Back on Earth, alarms blared through the resistance base. Ivanova looked up from her work, fear gripping her heart. Harlow burst into the lab, his face grim. They've found us. Tarek's leading a Kalran strike team right to our doorstep. Ivanova's mind raced. The array wasn't ready, but they were out of time. She nodded to her team. Deploy what we have. We'll have to make our stand here. The cavern erupted into chaos as fighters scrambled to defensive positions. Ivanova raced to the makeshift control center, her fingers flying over the targeting systems. The first Kalran ships breached their perimeter. Now, she shouted. A blinding beam of concentrated sunlight lanced upward, catching the lead Kalran vessel square in its hull. For a moment, it seemed the attack had succeeded. Then a shimmering shield sprang to life around the ship, containing and dispersing the energy. Ivanova's blood ran cold. Impossible! On the main view screen, Tarek's face appeared. His expression was a mix of triumph and regret. It's over, Elena. Surrender now, and I'll ensure you're treated fairly. A distant explosion rocked the base. Harlow grabbed Ivanova's arm. We need to go. Now. As they raced towards the escape tunnels, Ivanova's mind whirled. The Kalran shields. They had to be connected to the black site Nexia had mentioned. It was their only hope. They emerged from the tunnels to find a small squadron of battered ships waiting. Harlow's voice crackled over the comms. All units, scatter and regroup at the secondary rendezvous. Godspeed. As their ships streaked into the night sky, a furious battle erupted behind them. Zephyr's mercenary forces had arrived, engaging the Kalrans in a chaotic free-for-all. Ivanova clutched the data chip containing the array schematics, her expression resolute with grim willpower. Their next move was clear. They had to find Nexia and steal the counter-solar data. It was a desperate gamble, but with Earth's freedom hanging in the balance, they had no choice but to take it. The stolen Kalran shuttle shuddered as it broke atmosphere, its hull scorched from the frantic escape. Inside, Ivanova clutched the data chip containing the array schematics, her fingers tightening. Colonel Harlow piloted the craft with grim concentration, weaving through debris fields left by the chaotic battle above. We're being hailed, Harlow growled, eyeing the flashing comm panel. Ivanova nodded, steeling herself. The view screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Zephyr's alien visage. Doctor, the insectoid alien chittered, mandibles twitching. It seems we find ourselves in a mutually beneficial position. Spare me the pleasantries, Zephyr, Ivanova snapped. What do you want? The same thing you do. Access to Nexia's black site and the counter-solar data within. Harlow's eyes narrowed. And why should we trust you? Zephyr's compound eyes glinted. Because without my forces, you'll never breach the Kalran defenses. And without your scientific expertise, I cannot hope to understand the technology we seek. Ivanova exchanged a tense glance with Harlow. The colonel nodded grimly. Fine, Ivanova said, but this is a temporary alliance. Once we have the data, all bets are off. Naturally, Zephyr purred. The next hours were a blur of feverish preparation. Ivanova's team of scientists huddled over hastily assembled workstations, analyzing what little they knew of the black site's defenses. Harlow's rebels, a ragtag assortment of human fighters, moved with quiet efficiency, checking weapons and securing equipment. As they approached the black site, a massive obsidian structure floating in the void of space, Ivanova felt her breath catch. The Kalran defenses were even more formidable than they had anticipated. Energy shields shimmer around the facility, while swarms of fighter craft patrolled its perimeter. "Now!" Harlow barked. Zephyr's mercenary ships decloaked, unleashing a barrage of weapons fire that tore through the Kalran formation. In the chaos that followed, Ivanova's shuttle slipped through a gap in the defenses, racing towards a docking bay. The moment they touched down, all hell broke loose. Kalran guards swarmed the hangar, their energy weapons filling the air with sizzling bolts of plasma. Ivanova ducked behind a crate, her heart pounding as she returned fire with a captured Kalran pistol. Beside her, Harlow coordinated the human assault teams with terse efficiency. "Alpha team, push left! Beta, cover that flank!" Through the din of battle, Ivanova caught glimpses of Zephyr's insectoid warriors, their chitinous armor gleaming as they tore through Kalran defenses with brutal efficiency. For a moment, the unlikely allies fought as one, driven by desperation and the promise of the data that lay within. They fought their way deeper into the facility, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Ivanova's fingers flew over alien consoles, bypassing security protocols and unlocking sealed doors. At last, they reached the central data core, a towering monolith of alien technology. As Ivanova's team began the download, a fresh wave of Kalran reinforcements hit, the air filled with the screams of the wounded and dying, the acrid smell of ozone from energy weapons. "We're out of time!" Harlow shouted, firing his rifle one-handed as he dragged a wounded rebel to cover. Ivanova watched the progress bar crawl agonizingly slowly. 85%, 90%, 95%. A deafening explosion rocked the chamber. Through the smoke and debris, Ivanova saw Zephyr emerge, his compound eyes fixed on the data terminal. "I'll be taking that," the alien admiral hissed. Before Ivanova could react, Zephyr's clawed appendage lashed out, ripping the data chip from the console. With inhuman speed, he disappeared into the chaos of battle. "No!" Ivanova screamed, but it was too late. Alarms blared as the facility began to tear itself apart. Harlow grabbed Ivanova's arm, dragging her towards their escape route. "We've got what we came for," he growled. "Most of it, anyway. We need to go. Now." As they fled back to their shuttle, Ivanova's mind raced. They had the bulk of the counter-solar data, but Zephyr had escaped with a crucial piece. The race to incorporate the new technology into their solar array had begun, and the fate of Earth hung in the balance. Balance as Ivanova and Harlow's shuttle streaked away from the crumbling black site. The narrow escape left them with a hollow victory, most of the counter-solar data, but not all of it. Weeks passed in a blur of feverish work and mounting dread. Ivanova's team labored around the clock, incorporating the stolen data into the solar array's systems. Progress came in fits and starts, each breakthrough tempered by new obstacles. Meanwhile, Colonel Harlow's rebel forces engaged in increasingly desperate battles across the globe. They struck at Kalran supply lines, ambushed patrols, and sabotaged communication relays, anything to buy Ivanova more time. "We're close," Ivanova insisted, her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "The shielding problem—" A deafening explosion rocked the underground bunker. Harlow burst into the lab, his face grim. "They're here, the main Kalran invasion force." Ivanova's blood ran cold. "We need more time." "There is no more time," Harlow growled. He grabbed her arm, pulling her towards the command center. "We fight with what we have." The bunker's main display showed the unfolding horror. Massive Kalran warships darkened Earth's skies, their weapons already opening fire on population centers. Harlow barked orders into his comm unit, coordinating what meager defenses humanity could muster. "Colonel!" A technician's panicked voice cut through the chaos. "We're detecting energy buildup in the Kalran fleet. They're charging their main cannons." Ivanova's mind raced. The array wasn't ready, but they had no choice. She sprinted to the control station, her fingers flying over the console, redirecting all power to the solar focusing lens, targeting Kalran ships. "Elena, wait!" Harlow's warning came too late. The modified array fired, a beam of concentrated sunlight lancing into the sky. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a Kalran destroyer erupted in a spectacular explosion. A cheer went up from the command center. cut short as alarms began to blare. The array's systems were overloading, unable to contain the raw energy coursing through its unstable modifications. "Shut it down!" Harlow roared. Ivanova's hands danced across the controls, but it was no use. The array had become a runaway reaction, releasing pulses of uncontrolled solar energy that punched through the Kalran fleet's defenses. Ships exploded in silent bursts of light and debris. On the main display, a new threat appeared. A small flotilla of ships, moving with purpose through the chaos. At their head, a familiar craft, Admiral Zephyr's flagship. "They're hailing us," a technician announced. Zephyr's insectoid face filled the screen. "It seems your weapon is as unstable as it is potent, Doctor. I propose a mutually beneficial arrangement." Harlow's eyes narrowed. "And why should we trust you?" "Because," Zephyr's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement, "I am your only chance of salvaging anything from this debacle." As if to punctuate his point, the bunker shook with another impact. The array was tearing itself apart, and with it, humanity's last hope. Ivanova met Harlow's gaze, seeing her own desperation reflected there. She turned back to the screen. "What do you propose?" "My ships can extract your team and critical array components," Zephyr explained. "In return, you will help me perfect the technology. Together, we will strike back at those who betrayed us both." Another explosion rocked the facility. Chunks of ceiling crashed down around them. Ivanova nodded grimly. "We accept." What followed was a desperate evacuation. Zephyr's ships punched through the weakened Kalran lines, providing cover as Ivanova's team salvaged what they could of the array. The Earth's surface, scarred by orbital bombardment, fell away beneath them. Aboard Zephyr's flagship, Ivanova stared out a viewport at her ravaged homeworld. Harlow placed a hand on her shoulder. "This isn't over," he said quietly. Ivanova's eyes hardened. "No," she agreed. "It's just beginning." The ship accelerated, joining a growing fleet of mismatched vessels, human survivors, Andromedan rebels, and now a cadre of hardened mercenaries led by the infamous Nexia, an unlikely alliance forged in the fires of mutual destruction. As they plotted a course for the Kalran homeworld, Ivanova turned her attention to the salvaged array components. Their makeshift counter-solar cannon would be the key to breaching the capital's defenses. She allowed herself a grim smile. Counselor Zoran would soon learn the true meaning of retribution. The makeshift fleet dropped out of hyperspace, the Kalran capital world looming before them. Ivanova's fingers danced across the modified array controls, her eyes fixed on the swirling atmosphere below. "All ships, prepare for assault," Harlow's voice crackled over the comm. "Remember, we only get one shot at this." The array hummed to life, channeling raw solar energy into a focused beam. It lanced out, striking the planet's defense grid. Shields flickered and died as orbital platforms exploded in silent bursts of light. On the bridge of Zephyr's flagship, Ivanova watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. "Their defenses are crumbling. Nexia's team is away." The insectoid admiral chittered in acknowledgement. "And now we spring the trap." As Nexia's strike force engaged the palace defenses in a brutal firefight, Ivanova and Zephyr slipped through the chaos. They navigated twisting corridors, littered with the bodies of Kalran and mercenary forces alike. They found Counselor Zoran in his inner sanctum, a massive chamber dominated by swirling holograms of star systems. The Kalran leader's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with cruel amusement. "Ah, the human scientist and the traitor admiral," Zoran's voice dripped with disdain. "Come to witness the culmination of your failure?" With a gesture, he summoned a new hologram. Ivanova's breath caught as she recognized the shattered remains of Earth, drifting in the void. "Behold," Zoran continued, "the instrument of your species' final defeat. When detonated, this debris will render your entire system uninhabitable. And with your brilliance, Dr. Ivanova, we will harness the sun itself as a weapon of galactic dominion." Zephyr's mandibles clicked in fury. "You underestimate us, Zoran." The Kalran's laughter was cut short as alarms blared. Nexia's forces had breached the outer defenses. In a blur of motion, Zoran produced a weapon, grabbing Ivanova and pressing it to her head. The array components, he snarled at Zephyr. Now, or watch your human ally die. Time seemed to slow as Zephyr reached for the salvage technology. Ivanova's mind raced, calculating trajectories, power outputs, the consequences of each possible action. Suddenly, Zephyr spun, hurling the unstable components at the chamber's shield generators. The resulting explosion bathed the room in blinding light. Ivanova wrenched free from Zoran's grasp, diving for the control console. Her fingers flew across alien interfaces, desperately trying to abort the shattered Earth protocol. A strangled cry drew her attention. Zephyr lay dying, impaled on a twisted piece of debris, his compound eyes fixed on Ivanova, conveying volumes in that silent moment. Zoran staggered to his feet, blood seeping from a dozen wounds. "Too late," he wheezed. "The countdown has begun." Ivanova's gaze darted between the console and the gloating cauldron. The array's power readouts were spiking dangerously. In mere moments, Earth's remnants would detonate, dooming the solar system. She could redirect that power, she realized. One final, concentrated blast to obliterate the capital and the Sovereign Council. It would cripple the Kalran Empire, but at the cost of rendering Sol uninhabitable. Ivanova's hand hovered over the controls, the weight of billions of lives, present and future, bearing down upon her. The fires of the ruined sanctum raged around her as she steeled herself to make an impossible choice.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.